Wanted posters weren't uncommon in Lyon in 1942, but this one was different. Plastered on rain-slicked walls, it didn't show a face. It was a warning, a desperate plea from the high command of the German Gestapo. It read, "The enemy's most dangerous spy. We must find and destroy her." Klaus Barbie, the ruthless butcher of Lyon, slammed his fist on the desk. All his resources, all his spies, all his torture methods, and he couldn't catch her. This single agent was organizing resistance cells faster than he could crush them, arranging supply drops, vanishing into thin air, and leaving a trail of sabotaged bridges and derailed Nazi supply trains in her wake. The Germans didn't know her name. They didn't know what she looked like. They only knew her by a code name, Marie. They had only one distinguishing clue, a piece of intelligence that seemed almost mocking in its absurdity. Their most dangerous enemy, the phantom who haunted their occupation, was a woman. And she had a limp. They called her La Dame qui Boite, the Limping Lady. What the Gestapo didn't know was that this phantom was not French or British, but an American. Her name was Virginia Hall. And her prosthetic leg, which she'd nicknamed Cuthbert, was the least remarkable thing about her. This is the story of how a society debutante from Baltimore, Maryland, rejected by the U.S. State Department for being an amputee, walked and limped her way into the heart of enemy territory and became the unlikely architect of the French resistance.
The letter was thin, crisp, and carried the unfeeling weight of official Washington. Virginia Hall held it in her hands, the embossed seal of the U.S. State Department feeling like a small, cold stone under her thumb. She was in a drawing room in London, 1940. The city was braced for invasion, the air thick with the smell of coal smoke and the distant, metallic taste of fear. Outside, sandbags were piled like sleeping beasts against the grand facades of buildings. But in Virginia's mind, she was back in Washington, D.C., years earlier, standing in a polished hallway, hearing the words that had defined her life. An admirable record, Miss Hall, truly. Your language skills, fluent in French, German, Italian. Your time in Europe, impeccable. But the department has its regulations. The man hadn't met her eyes. He had stared at a point on the wall just past her left shoulder. The physical requirements are non-negotiable, he had continued, his voice steeped in polite regret. A field posting is simply not possible for someone with your condition. Condition. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to show him the telegrams she'd decoded in Warsaw, the reports she'd filed from Venice. Instead, she just stood there, feeling the familiar phantom ache in her lower left leg, the leg that wasn't there. The condition had a name. She called him Cuthbert. Cuthbert was her prosthetic leg, a heavy, clunky contraption of wood and leather that she'd had since the shooting accident in Turkey. It was 1933. She'd been hunting snipe in the marshes near Izmir, a young, adventurous woman working a clerical job at the consulate, dreaming of being a full-fledged Foreign Service officer. A simple trip, a stumble, her shotgun discharging. The wound was catastrophic. The infection that followed was worse. Amputation was the only way to save her life. The doctors had been grim. Your diplomatic career, it's over, my dear. The hell it is, she'd muttered into her pillow, fever-racked and furious. She learned to walk with Cuthbert. It was agony. The straps chafed, the wooden socket bruised her stump. But she mastered it. She learned to balance, to move with a distinct rhythmic gait. She would not be an invalid. She applied to the Foreign Service again and again. The rejections piled up. Not suitable for service, unable to meet physical standards. Her country, the country she loved and wanted to serve, had looked at her, seen her limp, and dismissed her. She was a woman to begin with, already a disadvantage in the diplomatic corps' old boys network. But an amputee woman? Unthinkable. Now in London, with Hitler's bombers drawing black lines across the sky, that rejection felt like a lifetime ago. France had fallen. The Nazis were masters of Europe. And the unsuitable Virginia Hall had found her way. She hadn't come to England to knit socks. While the U.S. remained officially neutral, clinging to isolationism, Virginia had found work. First, driving ambulances in the chaos of France before the collapse, dodging Stuka dive bombers and ferrying wounded poilus, French infantrymen, from the front lines. When her unit disintegrated, she escaped, walking, Cuthbert complaining with every step, over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain. It was a brutal, agonizing journey that should have been impossible. It only hardened her resolve. She made her way to London, the heart of the resistance, and it was here she found the people who didn't see a liability. They called themselves the Special Operations Executive, SOE. They were a new, secret organization, nicknamed Churchill's Secret Army, or the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Their job was not to fight in polished uniforms. Their job was to set Europe ablaze. They needed agents to send into occupied France, agents who could blend in, organize, sabotage, and, most importantly, not get caught. In a small, smoke-filled office near Baker Street, a man named Nicholas Bodington had interviewed her. He was shrewd, with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He listened to her story. He heard her perfect, unaccented French. He saw the fire in her eyes, the steel spine that had carried her across mountains. He barely glanced at her leg. "The Americans think you're unfit for service, do they?" Bodington said, tapping a pencil on his desk. "They find my leg inconvenient," Virginia said, her voice tight. "We, on the other hand," he said, leaning forward, "find your mind exceptionally convenient. Your languages, your knowledge of the continent, your demonstrated resilience." He smiled, a thin, rare smile. "The Germans will be looking for men. They will be looking for soldiers. They will not be looking for you." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "We want to send you into France. You will be the first female agent we deploy there. You will have no backup. You will be entirely on your own. You will be expected to build a resistance network from scratch. If you are caught, we will deny all knowledge of your existence. It is, quite frankly, a suicide mission." Virginia Hall looked at the man who was finally offering her the one thing she had always craved, a chance to fight. "When do I start?" She finished reading the letter from the State Department, another rejection, this one for a simple desk job she'd applied for months ago, a final absurd insult. She didn't feel anger anymore. She felt a cold, clean purpose. She tore the letter in two, then in four, and dropped the pieces into the fireplace. She watched the official seal curl and blacken in the flames. The State Department could keep its polished floors and its petty rules. She had a war to win. Her code name would be Marie. Her destination, Vichy, France. Her cover, a correspondent for the New York Post. And her limp, the very thing her own country saw as a weakness, would become her signature. The Germans would hunt for a woman with a limp, but they would never, not in their wildest nightmares, imagine that this crippled American woman was the ghost in their machine, the architect of their demise. Cuthbert wasn't a liability. He was a disguise, and La Dame qui Boite was about to go to work. The train groaned into Lyon-Perrache station. hissing steam into the gray, occupied air of October 1941. Virginia Hall, now Marie, stepped onto the platform. Her new identity felt as stiff as the cheap dark blue suit she wore. She was no longer Virginia Hall, the ambitious diplomat. She was Marie Monin, a nosy American reporter for the New York Post. It was the perfect cover. America was still neutral, and journalists were tolerated, if watched. She clutched her press credentials, the ink still feeling wet, and took her first step onto French soil as an agent. Clack, thump, clack, thump. Cuthbert's rhythm on the stone platform sounded deafeningly loud to her. Every eye, she felt, was on her limp. A pair of Feldgendarmerie, German military police, stood near the exit, their steel gorgets gleaming. They were checking papers, their eyes sweeping the crowd with bored menace. This is it, she thought, the first test. Don't flinch. She approached them, her heart a cold knot in her stomach. She offered her papers and her brightest, most oblivious American smile. Bonjour, monsieur. Marie Monin, New York Post, she said, in her flawless, slightly nasal French, affecting the air of a woman who found the war terribly inconvenient but fascinating. The guard glanced at her passport, then at her leg. His eyes lingered. Virginia didn't try to hide it. Instead, she leaned on it, as if wearied from the journey. This old thing, she'd practiced saying, a hunting accident, terribly clumsy of me. The guard's gaze softened, just a fraction. A cripple, a woman, a journalist. He saw a nuisance, not a threat. He stamped her papers with a heavy thud and waved her through. Viel Glück, Fräulein. Virginia smiled sweetly. Merci, and walked out into the city, her knuckles white on the handle of her suitcase. The butcher of Lyon, Klaus Barbie, was not yet power, but the city was already a nest of Gestapo agents, collaborators, and informants. Lyon was not Paris. It was a city of hidden courtyards, traboules, narrow streets, and secrets. It was the unofficial capital of the Free Zone, the southern half of France governed by the collaborationist Vichy regime, but it crawled with German agents. Virginia's first task was simple and deadly. Make contact. The SOE had given her a name, Georges. He was a doctor, Jean Rousseau, who was rumored to have sympathies. Her instructions were to find him and gauge his willingness to help. No codes, no secret handshakes. Just a direct approach, a high-stakes gamble. She found his clinic in the Croix-Rousse district, a working-class neighborhood. It was small, discreet. She sat in the waiting room, feigning a cough, her stomach turning. What if he's a collaborator? What if this is a trap? A thin, tired-looking man with intelligent eyes finally called her in. This was Dr. Rousseau. He listened patiently to her fake cough. "You are not sick, mademoiselle," he said finally, his voice flat. "No, docteur," she said, meeting his gaze. "I am not. But my friends in London are very worried about the health of France." His eyes widened just slightly. It was the agreed-upon recognition phrase. He motioned for her to be silent, quickly checked the hallway, and then locked the door. "You are the American," he whispered, his tone a mix of disbelief and awe. "The one they sent." "I am," Virginia said. "And you're—" He gestured to her leg. "It got me here, didn't it?" she replied, her voice firm. A slow smile spread across Dr. Rousseau's face. It was the beginning. Through Rousseau, she met others, a printer who could forge ration cards, a railway worker who knew the German transport schedules, a young woman named Germaine who ran a safe house. They were a small, frightened but furious collection of ordinary people. They were her first circuit, her network. She called it Heckler. Virginia, as Marie, became a fixture in Lyon. She was seen in all the right places, the cafes favored by German officers and Vichy officials. She was charming, opinionated, and just American enough to be considered harmlessly naive. She'd ask innocent questions for her articles, and bored officers, flattered by the attention, would talk. They'd brag about troop movements, complain about supply shortages, and reveal new security protocols. Every scrap of information was gold. At night, her apartment, a small attic flat, transformed. The lights went out. The curtains were drawn. By the dim glow of a single candle, she would unpack her heavy, suitcase-sized wireless radio. This was the most dangerous part of her job. She would string the long antenna wire out the window, assemble the set, and put on the headphones. Then the tapping began. Dot, 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 dash, dash, dot. Morse code. Transmitting to London. Every second she was on the air, she was a beacon. The Germans had specialized detector vans, the Funkmassenwagen, that roamed the streets, triangulating radio signals. The rule was to transmit for no more than 20 minutes. After that, the risk of capture grew exponentially. Her fingers would fly, sending her intelligence. 2 Wehrmacht battalions moved east from Lyon, 7 Neuve, destination unknown. New checkpoint established Pont-Morand. Food shortages critical in... One night, she heard a noise. Heavy boots on the stairs of her building. Thud, thud, thud. Her blood ran cold. The Gestapo. She was halfway through a transmission. She couldn't stop, couldn't sign off without the confirmation code from London. The boots were on her landing. 1 more minute, just 1 more. Tap, 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 tap. There was a loud, heavy bang on her door. Aufnen, Gestapo! Virginia ripped the headphones off, her hands shaking. She finished her last code. Received, came the faint reply from London. She tore the radio apart, shoving the components into a hidden compartment under her floorboards. The door splintered. She yanked the antenna wire from the window, grabbed her go bag, a small satchel with money, fake papers, and a cyanide pill, and raced to the only other exit, a small skylight onto the steeply sloped roof. She scrambled out into the freezing rain, Cuthbert slipping on the wet tiles, just as the Gestapo burst into her empty room. She lay flat on the roof, heart pounding against the slate, listening to the shouts and curses from below. She had escaped. This time. She knew she could never return. Her Marie identity was burned. The ghost of Lyon had to vanish. But she wasn't running from the war. She was just moving to a new front. The Limping Lady was only just getting started.
To the Gestapo, Marie Monin had vanished. She had dissolved into the rain-swept alleys of Lyon, and the file on her was closed, marked Evasions Verdacht, suspected escape. But Virginia Hall had not escaped from France. She had simply melted into it. With the help of Dr. Rousseau's network, she was smuggled out of the city in the back of a cheese truck, the pungent smell of Roquefort masking her own scent of fear and adrenaline. Her destination was the Haute-Loire, a rugged mountainous region of forests and high plateaus. It was a land of shepherds and farmers, a place where the granite hillsides bred stubborn, independent people who had little love for the Germans or their Vichy puppets. She arrived at a remote farmhouse, nestled in a valley and belonging to a farmer named Henri. He was a man of few words, with eyes that had seen too much. "Germaine from Lyon sent you," he stated. It wasn't a question. "I am Brigitte," Virginia said, offering her new, heavily forged identity papers. She was now Brigitte, a displaced woman from Alsace, seeking quiet work. Her limp? Easily explained. An injury from a fictional bombing raid in Strasbourg. Henri grunted. He led her to a small, cold room with a stone floor. "You will help my wife with the goats and the cheese. You will not talk to strangers. The milice are everywhere." Virginia nodded. "Thank you." Her life became a harsh physical routine. Before dawn, she was in the cold barn, her hands raw and chapped, learning to milk the recalcitrant goats. She learned to churn butter, to haul firewood, and to navigate the steep, muddy pastures. Cuthbert was agony on the rocky terrain. She often fell, cursing in a silent, hot rage, but she always got back up. To any observer, she was a broken, quiet woman, the farm's new crippled helper. But the shepherdess had a secret. By night, the farmhouse's cellar became the new headquarters for the Heckler Network. While Henri and his wife slept, Virginia would be at the wireless, the clack, clack, clack of her Morse key muffled by stone walls. She was no longer just gathering intelligence, she was an organizer. Her new mission? Arm the resistance. The local maquis, young Frenchmen who had fled to the hills to avoid being drafted into forced labor in Germany, were scattered, hiding in the forests, armed with little more than hunting rifles and fury. They needed weapons, explosives, and most of all, leadership. Virginia, as Brigitte, began to make contact. She'd meet cell leaders in secret, in the back rooms of darkened auberges or in the ruins of old chapels. They were wary. Who was this woman, this American with a limp who spoke perfect French and claimed to have a direct line to London? She had to earn their trust. "London will send planes," she told a grizzled Maquis captain named Michel. "They will drop weapons, but I need you to find me a field, flat, away from roads, and defensible." Michel scoffed. "Planes here? The Germans will see the fires. We'll all be arrested." "You will light the fires only when you hear the plane," Virginia insisted, her voice low and confident. "London is waiting." After weeks of persuasion, he finally agreed. They chose a remote plateau, nicknamed Paradis. Virginia transmitted the coordinates, the date, and the recognition phrase to London. "Le chapeau de mon oncle is blue. My uncle's hat is blue." The night of the drop was moonless, the air biting cold. Virginia waited with Michel's men hidden in the trees. They were tense, smoking nervously. Cuthbert was a dead, cold weight on her leg. What if they don't come? What if this was a mistake? Then she heard it. A deep, faint drone in the north. It grew, a steady, pulsing thrum. It was the sound of hope. "Now!" she commanded. The men raced into the field, lighting the three arranged bonfires that formed the landing L. Out of the darkness, a massive shape roared overhead, a British Halifax bomber. It was so low she felt she could almost touch it. Then the sky filled with ghosts. Parachutes, dozens of them, blossoming against the stars. The men cheered, a raw, guttural sound, and ran to retrieve the heavy cylindrical containers. They tore them open like children at Christmas. Inside, Sten guns, gleaming with grease, plastic explosives, detonators, radios, gold francs. Virginia stood back, a grim smile on her face. Michel approached her, his eyes shining. He held out a brand new Sten gun.
We did not believe, mademoiselle. Believe now. This is just the beginning. Now you have the tools. I will teach you how to use them. A week later, a key railway viaduct connecting Lyon to the German supply lines in the south erupted in a spectacular explosion, cutting Nazi logistics for a critical 48 hours. The Gestapo in Lyon, hearing reports of a new, highly organized Maquis force, were baffled. They had no idea that the Limping Lady they had chased from the city was now in the mountains, transforming goat farmers and runaway students into an army.
The winter of 1941 bled into the spring of 1942, and the Haute-Loire became Virginia's fortress. The successful airdrop at Paradis had cemented her authority. She was no longer just Brigitte, the farmhand. She was La Madone, the Madonna of the mountains, a near mythical figure who could summon weapons from the sky. Her network grew, branching out like the roots of an old oak. She wasn't just arming the Maquis, she was building a sophisticated infrastructure of sabotage and exfiltration. Her most critical new operation was an escape line. Allied airmen, British, Canadian, and soon American, were being shot down over France in increasing numbers. If caught, they faced interrogation, torture, or execution. If they were lucky, they'd be found by the resistance. Virginia, with her SOE funding, began to organize what the airmen would later call the Freedom Trail. It was a perilous journey. The route started in the north near Lyon and snaked south through the mountains where she was based before crossing the most formidable barrier of all, the snow-capped Pyrenees Mountains, which separated France from neutral Spain. Virginia became the linchpin. She rented a new safe house, a small villa in the town of Le Chambon-sur-Lignon, a place known for its quiet defiance. From here, she coordinated everything. The process was agonizingly slow and fraught with danger. A downed pilot would be found by a farmer, hidden in a barn and given civilian clothes. A local passeur, guide, would move him to the next village, then another, then another. They were parcels, as the network called them. One day, 3 parcels arrived at her villa at once. 2 young British pilots, barely 20, and a more seasoned American bomber navigator. They were exhausted, terrified, and suspicious. They said a woman was in charge. The American, a Texan named Lieutenant Miller, said, his eyes scanning her. Didn't expect, well, someone with a limp? She finished for him, her voice dry. She was busy at a table, forging ID cards, her hand steady. Sit down, Lieutenant. You're drinking goat's milk. It's all we have. She briefed them, her tone all business. You are now French laborers. You do not speak English. You do not look anyone in the eye. You will follow your guide Jacques to the letter. He will take you to the foothills. From there, another guide will take you over the mountains. Do not get caught. If you are, we do not know you. The youngest Brit, a boy named Tom, was shaking. My leg, I was hit. I don't know if I can make the mountains. Virginia stopped her work and looked at him. She then looked down at Cuthbert, her own prosthetic leg. My leg was amputated in 1933. I walked over the Pyrenees to get out of France last time. You have 2 good legs, son. You'll make it. The room went silent. The airmen stared at her, their respect palpable. She wasn't just a coordinator, she was one of them. But as her network successes grew, so did the danger. The Gestapo was not stupid. The blown-up bridges, the derailed trains, the whispers of rescued airmen, it all pointed to a single coordinated mind in the Haute-Loire. They began to connect the dots. Witnesses described a new woman in the area, a shepherdess who spoke French with a strange accent, a woman with a limp. The file on La Dame qui boite was reopened. This time, they had a region to focus on. The milice and Gestapo patrols in the mountains intensified. They conducted snap raids on farms, searching for hidden radios and weapons. Virginia had to move her wireless set constantly, transmitting from barns, caves, and even the crypt of a friendly church. One evening, her radio operator, a young man named Pierre, was transmitting from a farmhouse cellar. Virginia was acting as a lookout. She was in the barn, pretending to feed the goats, when she heard the trucks. German troop carriers. They were moving fast, turning up the dirt track to our farm. It wasn't a patrol. It was a targeted raid. "Pierre!" she yelled, running, limping heavily on the uneven ground, back to the house. "They're here! Get out! Get out now!" Pierre burst from the cellar, his radio set in his arms. They ran for the woods, the first shots from the trucks kicking up dirt around their feet. Schmeisser machine pistols ripped the air. Pierre cried out, hit in the back. He fell, the radio tumbling from his grasp. "Go! Allez-y!" he screamed at her, clutching his side. "Take the codes! Go!" Virginia hesitated, her heart breaking. To stop was to be captured. To be captured meant the entire network, every safe house, every guide, every airman would be compromised. She made the impossible choice. She ran, plunging into the dark forest, with Cuthbert snagging on roots, branches whipping her face. Behind her, she heard more shots, and then, mercifully, silence. She didn't stop running for a mile. When she finally collapsed against a tree, gasping for air, she was alone. Pierre was gone. The radio was gone. And the Germans knew definitively that the Limping Lady was in their midst. The hunt was no longer regional, it was personal.